Hello everyone, it's Dylan from Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush episode review. This time we will be reviewing episode 95, the duel between Tazaki and Asaka, and this was actually a really surprisingly serious, sad, and very good episode. When I learned that these two characters were dueling, I didn't really think much of it. I actually thought that it was kind of a Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's reference, and that's the only reason that these two characters would be dueling each other, since Tazaki and Asana were so close in Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's, and there was definitely a little bit of, I think, references to those two characters' dynamics in Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's, but besides that, this episode actually went a lot deeper than I thought it would, and it started out very serious, and it ended very serious. I think you could argue that this was one of the saddest episodes of the show, and in my opinion, probably one of the best episodes of the show. I mean, there was not really any, like, out-of-place humor that broke up tension, which is what happens sometimes with Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's and Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush, and it was an episode that took itself very, very seriously and probably saw the highest death total that we have ever seen in any single episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! I mean, it's definitely one of the highest, if not the highest, knowing that at least 8.88 million people died in this episode. So it starts very, very seriously. Udius, Yuhi, and Uemu are trying to figure out, you know, what is with the Rush Duel robot, what is the key that this robot might be holding, which I'm sure is going to be very important down the road later on in this arc. And Tazaki goes to feed the 8.88 million countrymen inside Valvagear, and they inform him, and he can see it, that they are slowly dying, very similarly to what was happening with the Duty Nishaw fleet that we learned about at the end of episode 91. We knew that he had lost about half of his people, and all of a sudden, the people here in Valvagear are dying very rapidly. And so here comes the conundrum of the episode, right? They tell Tazaki not to tell Udius what's happening because they don't want Udius to get overwhelmed with the situation, and they don't want Udius to feel sad to the point where he's not able to move at the pace he needs to move at in order to solve what's going on, which honestly makes a lot of sense. And it's one of, like, the classic life conundrums. If somebody that you're friends with or that you love tells you a secret and it's their dying wish, but you know that you probably should tell the person that they want the secret held from, what do? Like, do you break a person's dying wish, or do you hold this secret within you potentially forever? I mean, it is something that, like, we will get faced with probably at some point in our life. Hopefully not, but I just feel like it's a very common experience, and I loved that that was the overall theme of this episode. And so Tazaki goes to Asaka in a moment of desperation and just says, hey, can you give me 8.88 million of your employees so I can put them in the spaceship so Udius will never know that Valvagear is empty? Which, you know, it's a nice gesture, but I'm sure he would know if, you know, Earthlings were in the spaceship versus, you know, his own countrymen. But it's a nice gesture nonetheless. And again, you take desperate measures when you are at a point of desperation. And Asaka scoffs at it, you know, calls out Tazaki and says, is that what, you know, being a man is? You know, deceiving other people, because Tazaki had said, you know, man to man, this was like the promise. And so the two of them duel. And we learned throughout this duel that something is going on with Asaka. There were really good moments of foreshadowing, like she would say something or Tazaki would say something and you could see her grimace, like she was uncomfortable, like she wasn't as steadfast in her beliefs and her ideals as she normally has been for the entirety of the show. And we learn as this duel goes on, and the duel was good. I mean, it was nothing special. It was everything going on around the duel that made it such an impactful episode. We learn that Asaka had been tasked with keeping Duty Nishaw alive and trying to save his life, and she also was withholding that information from Udius, right? Because she easily could have told Udius what was going on. She chose not to, and so all of a sudden, that's something that I loved about the episode, because it was so personal for both of these characters. You think Asaka is coming at this situation from a position of logic, and no emotional investment. But then you realize that she's been doing the same thing that Tazaki feels like he needs to do. Trying to withhold something from Yugioh so that Yugioh can reach an end goal that could potentially save everyone. And Duty Nishaw finally makes his decision and tells Tazaki that doubting is not a bad thing because it means that you're making progress, even if you don't have your heart set on something. And right after that, Duty Nishaw dies. I mean, it was really an unexpectedly grim episode. Duty Nishaw passes away. You could see how sad Asaka and Tazaki are, and the duel continues, and the duel is so somber at this point. It's like, what are we really fighting for anymore? And there's no music. The usage of audio when Duty Nishaw's entire clan was, being eradicated, and when Duty Nishaw passed away, and even after the duel, and during the final turn where there was no music for a prolonged period of time, the audio usage and utilization was so freaking good in this entire episode. And it looks like Tazaki is going to pull it out, but unfortunately, even though he locked Asaka's board from tributing, Asaka has the one card that can get her out of the situation, and that is Fusion. Because she fuses the monsters on her field, she doesn't need to obviously tribute them in order to get a better high-powered monster out. And so she fuses, she ends up winning with that fusion monster, and the duel comes to an end. And somebody pointed this out during the watch-along, I believe Hawk, so shout out to Hawk, said that the music that played at the end was the same music that played when Quaidul passed away. And I feel like this probably is going to be a motif for the sadder moments, and it is a great piece of audio, so I do not mind that at all. And Tazaki kind of realizes at the end that, there's no substitute for friends, and there's no replacements for the employees who hold you close, which was, I thought, a direct reference to the dynamic that these two variant characters had in Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s because of Asana and Tazaki, kind of being, Tazaki at least being an employee of Asana, also being a caretaker in her younger years. So I think that was definitely a reference to Sevens. But this episode, as it zoomed in on the now empty crate that was holding Duty Nishaw and held his last moments, this episode, man, was just insanely deep. It was insanely heavy, and the whole theme, it reminds me, not to bring in a personal situation, as sometimes you guys know that I do. I think this was about 8 or 9 years ago. Unfortunately, my grandfather had dementia, and he was nearing the end of his life, and his best friend had passed away. And I remember, my family had the hard debate to make whether they should tell him or not. They ultimately decided not to because they felt it wasn't really necessary to put him through, any more grief. And like, you just, this situation is a real situation that happens. And I think that's why the episode resonated so deeply with me, because I've seen this happen before where you learn a piece of information and should I tell them? Should I not tell them? What's the right thing to do? What's the wrong thing to do? It is such a great debate, and every situation is a little different. I understood Asaka's perspective. I understood Tazaki's perspective. The episode does not end with Yugioh learning the situation that at least 8.88 million people have died, including his dear friend Duty Nishaw. And maybe not dear friend, but his friend at the very least. And I think Nishaw's death really symbolized just how serious this is, right? Because it's one thing if 8.88 million generic, non-discernible countrymen all die. I mean, it's still tragic. They've been with us since the first episode. But it's another thing where a character who actually has a unique personality, a unique backstory, a unique background, and a character that has a high position of power because he is a commander, that tells you that it's not just the low-level people getting killed by this. They are now all being destroyed, and they got to figure it out quick. We see Yugioh at the end. Yugioh does not look like his happy-go-lucky self. I don't know what his deal is. He probably, at least in my opinion, knows what's going on with the Valgyrians, and he might feel responsible for it. He might feel helpless because maybe he doesn't actually know how to stop it, or maybe he knows how to stop it, and he knows that stopping it is going to be very, very difficult. But it's very clear to me we have to get to Yugioh because Yugioh seems to be the key to solving this mystery, as well as the Rush Duel robot. But guys, let me know your thoughts on what I thought was a fantastic episode 95. The first 5 episodes of this arc have maybe been the best first 5 episodes of any arc of Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush so far. I mean, they have all been really, really enjoyable, maybe except like 91 and 92, but the last 3 episodes in particular have been insanely good, and I would love to know your thoughts on everything going on in Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll talk to you in the comments, and I hope you have an amazing day. Take care, guys.